Everyone said that the girl had sinned too much in her previous lives, and now she was destined to become a lonely star who relieved others of suffering. But she didn't understand why she was the only one who had to suffer with this man. She was destined for imprisonment, misery, and abuse. No matter how hard she resisted, it was all in vain. But what bothered her more was that sometimes this man could be too gentle. The Adonis she met with explained to her that Leon Lin needed to purify her karma, and only by resolving all of this man's wrongs could she purify her karma. But no matter how hard she tried, his wounds only grew deeper. One day, she protected a guy because she knew that without him, the storyline would be broken. But Adonis there immediately reported that the main villain's grudges had grown. The girl hoped that every step the main villain took toward her would be a cleansing, but she was worried about how close he would have to be to her to finally be happy. Lying in, the bath girl was in great pain, and when she woke up, she found her bleeding wrist, which hurt a lot. But the man was surprised that she was still alive, and then the girl realized that this madman had used her blood to take a bath. He was definitely crazy, so she mentally turned to Adonis and asked him to come save her sooner rather than later. After all, he was the one who had transported her to that time, and she felt like everything that was happening to her was clearly not normal. But then he quickly moved her back and informed her that this unfortunate young man, Qing Luo, was the protagonist of her mission. But she didn't believe that this man could be called unfortunate. But Adonis calmly informed her that from now on, the girl was a lone star. Since the past life has committed a huge number of sins and murders, now the souls of all her tortured victims turned her curse, and to change her fate, she must purify her karma, dispel the wrongs of victims, and punish the unworthy. Whereupon a purification window appeared in front of her, stating her purification progression, her identity, namely that she was a 21st century first-class assassin, status, and atrocity. Adonis explained that this was a mission for the first life, for she was the daughter of the master of the strongest clan in the continent, and she was also an unimaginable beauty, but with a black heart. She once saved a boy named Qing Luo when she was still an apprentice. She noticed his talent and wanted to take him for herself. So she persuaded his father, and they took the boy as their son. But when the child's powers reached their peak, Leon Lin destroyed his spiritual source and threw him off a cliff to his death. However, Qing Luo was revived by the forces of dark cultivators and turned into demons, destroying her entire clan. And now her mission is to return to the time when she first saved Qing Luo and take him under her care to raise him and teach him everything. And it was in the interest of Leon Lin herself because she should make him the future head of the clan. But Leon Lin was not sure that she went to the right time, because this guy looked like he wanted to tear her apart. And then Adonis noticed that it was really his mistake, and he sent her on time when the guy was already under the influence of dark power. Leon Lin begged him to hurry up and move her again because she would die from the pain. But Adonis awkwardly pointed out that this reality was quite far away, and Adonis's transmigration powers were exhausted. It would take about 1.5 years to recover, so she would have to get closer to her target anyway. After that, he simply vanished, and then Leon Lin realized that not only was she bleeding, but she was also completely deprived of all her energy flows, and she would definitely not be able to survive being crippled. But when she opened her eyes, she found Qing Luo. He only looked at the girl with a smile, noticing that she was becoming more and more interesting to him. After all, she hadn't even breathed for half a day, but now she was suddenly awake, and suggested that perhaps Leon Lin had returned because her soul could not rest, and she did not want to leave him, and he was happy that Leon Lin was so good to him. And the girl only awkwardly remarked that she was very proud of the success and Qing Luo. But the guy on Qing Luo noticed that something strange was happening to Leon Lin and even assumed that someone had taken possession of her body. Leon Lin immediately tensed up and was very scared, but started to deny it. Of course she did, because he had cut her tendons and left her bleeding to death. But she had to choose her words carefully because her life was still precious to her. Therefore, Leon Lin smilingly informed Qing Luo that she would not blame him, despite what he was doing. But then Qing Luo silently took out his dagger, causing the girl to be completely shocked. And then Adonis explained to her that just now, her words had made their target very angry. At first, Lian Lin screamed in shock, but then she stopped, because she realized it would do nothing. So she kept quiet and endured the abuse. She begged Adonis to come and save her, because she would be tortured to death. But Adonis begged him not to rush, for at this time he was gathering all his remaining strength to cure her. But suddenly approaching her wounded chest, Qing Luo gently began to lick her blood, explaining that Lian Lin should not move as he was healing her wound. At this moment, Adonis informed her that he had accumulated enough power from the star to heal her wounds. And then, when she felt better, she threw Qing Luo away from her and started to run away, for she realized that if she was to make the road of life, she must get as far away from here as possible. But suddenly she was stopped by an insanely intense pain in her chest, and then Adonis explained that in this storyline, after killing Lian Lin, Qing Luo had placed a parasite in her body. Taking advantage of her helplessness, Qing Luo came up to her and smilingly remarked that what was happening was very interesting and asked Lian Lin not to hide anything from him. He suddenly hugged her and brought her close to him and kissed her. Lian Lin was shocked by this because she didn't understand what was going on in his head. But they were distracted by servants and said that people from neighboring clans came here and then rose up. With the help of dark magic, the man created clothes and a sword, then went to them to deal with them. Lian Lin looked at him and asked Adonis why the man who should hate her suddenly kissed her. Adonis explained that Qing Luo was not only angry at Lian Lin because she had destroyed his talent and spiritual roots. It was because he was in love with her, because there was no other way to explain that he put parasites in her body, thus keeping her alive, and noticed that the main villain's desire was not only to become the head of the clan, but also to do different things with Lian Lin. She was worried about this, but Adonis explained that there was no other option. After absorbing the dark power, Qing Luo's only wish was to possess her body and mind. But suddenly interrupting their conversation, another guy came and hugged the girl and was madly happy that Lian Lin was still alive. Adonis immediately warned Lian Lin not to get close to Shu Ran because the last thing Qing Luo wanted was for her to talk to him. But before Lian Lin could do anything, Qing Luo appeared and fiercely looked at the whole scene, so all Lian Lin could do was to push him away and ask him to leave. But Shu Ran pointed his blade at Qing Luo and said that even if he had to sacrifice his life, he would never let Lian Lin fall into the hands of this villain. But Qing Luo remarked with a smile that apparently Lian Lin was so worried about him harming her lover that she wanted to drive him away. While Lian Lin was in shock, Adonis explained that her character in the past had often bragged to the servants and Qing Luo himself that Shu Ran was her most desirable man. Turning to the girl, Shu Ran explained that he knew about Lian Lin's feelings. So as soon as they returned, he would marry her immediately. But she awkwardly asked him to be quiet. Then a battle broke out between the two men. Lian Lin immediately turned to Adonis to ask if Shu Ran should die now, but he calmly remarked that the guy was literally the epitome of good luck, so he wouldn't die so easily. She was worried about it, because the guy wasn't going to die anyway, and he didn't need help, so Adonis awkwardly explained that he wasn't sure anymore. After all, they had interfered with the plot enough, and now he didn't even know if Shu Ran would die because the story was falling apart, in which case the purification mission would fail and the curse would double. So she stood in front of the guy, and at the last moment, Qing Luo managed to deflect his dagger so as not to hurt the girl. And she, without wasting time, turned to Shu Ran, ordering him to run away. He agreed, but sadly added that he would definitely come back to save her. In the end, only he managed to escape, Qing Luo approached her. Qing Luo grabbed her hand and started to stare at her face. The girl realized that she was going to die and this guy was going to kill her, but she remembered that Qing Luo had once been in love with her, so she reached out and kissed him. Qing Luo didn't understand this kind of trick, but Lian Lin explained that she really loved Qing Luo, and she only let Shu Ran leave because her feelings for the guy had cooled down. But Qing Luo didn't believe it, and realized that it was all a deception, and he was disgusted that the girl was willing to give up her pride and her body so easily for the sake of Shu Ran. Then he came closer and pulled her to him and kissed her, and a worried Adonis noticed that now the amount of resentment of the main villain had increased a lot. After crying, he explained to the girl that his resentment was obvious because Leon Lin had helped his rival escape right in front of him. And then she confessed her love to him. As it turned out at this point, the number of offenses of the main villain had reached 100, and Adonis begged the girl to do something, otherwise it would end badly for the two of them. She promised that she would definitely think of something, but when she tried to get up, she noticed that she had chains on her legs that prevented her from walking. So all Leon Lin could do was to move around her room. Adonis was sad that Leon Lin had pissed off the main villain too much, because now he would act even worse towards her. Adonis also sadly thought that if he failed the first mission, the Demon Lord's seal would only grow stronger. And because of that, Adonis wouldn't be able to get his real body back anytime soon. But suddenly Adonis heard some noise, so he quickly hid, asking the girl to do her best to fulfill their mission. But suddenly a girl from her clan appeared in front of Leon Lin. Leon Lin was surprised because the girl clearly doesn't look like she was a captive. After that, he ran up to her and immediately hugged Leon Lin and was happy that she was alive. After that, she asked Qing Luo to explain why he had not told her anything before, because she was very sad when she thought that Leon Lin was dead. But he calmly informed that from now on, this girl's duty would be to take full care of Leon Lin. He smilingly informed that she would definitely try her best. But as soon as the doors closed behind them, he told Leon Lin that she knew she hated Qing Luo for destroying her clan. But it wasn't his fault at all, because it wouldn't have happened if someone from their clan hadn't destroyed his source of power and thrown him off a cliff. And her dear Qing Luo had suffered too much. He literally had no other choice. So the girl begged that Leon Lin forgive Qing Luo. And then, the shocked Leon Lin realized that Qing Luo had not told anyone that she was the person who had done all this. She knew that all that happened was her fault, and because of that, she was very sorry to Qing Luo. But when Leon Lin wanted to comfort the girl, Adonis said that she should be careful with her words, because the main villain was still around and heard her. So Leon Lin said with a smile that she couldn't blame Qing Luo, and then the girl was very unhappy with such an outcome. He reported that she understood how difficult it was for Leon Lin right now, and she had no need to hide her true feelings. But Leon Lin noticed that there were never any lies and pretenses between them, and she really didn't feel hatred towards Qing Luo. And then the girl realized that Leon Lin was too arrogant. After all, she was the clan master's eldest daughter who had been lowered to an ordinary fish. It would be strange if she really didn't feel anger. Perhaps she still didn't trust her completely. So she asked why Leon Lin wished Qing Luo dead in front of the whole clan and said that she was dreaming of his torment. And then the shocked girl realized that her character had literally buried the chance of a good relationship with Qing Luo with her own hands, and apparently the original Leon Lin really wanted to die. She realized that she was very blind and naive and didn't know her heart, and only now she realized that she didn't love Shu Ran and her only love was Qing Luo. But he was shocked because Leon Lin had always assured her that Shu Ran was her true destiny. But Leon Lin explained that she had known herself too poorly all along, and maybe they had a warm relationship with Shu Ran back then. But things were different now. The shocked girl still didn't understand, because even after being spared, Leon Lin thrust her sword into Qing Luo. Leon Lin was once again convinced that she was literally crazy. She explained that she was just angry because her lover had destroyed the house where they grew up together. The girl realized that Qing Luo should still be at the door, so if she kept pushing Leon Lin, it would definitely work. So he suggested Leon Lin to go to lunch and discuss everything over a meal, but Leon Lin explained that she urgently needed to talk to Qing Luo. The flustered girl explained that Qing Luo had already left on business. He didn't have time. And moreover, Leon Lin should have rested because of her wounds. But Leon Lin explained that in that case, she wanted to rest alone. The girl cried, explaining that she had promised Qing Luo that she would take proper care of Lian Lin, so she couldn't move a step away from her. Lian Lin agreed and went to bed quietly, but Bai He stood over her, realizing that Qing Luo loved Lian Lin too much and wanted to possess her even if he had to hold her captive. And he would never forgive Lian Lin for doing such a thing because Qing Luo must have her. But when Lian Lin woke up, she found that Qing Luo was already at her bedside and he wanted to listen to her. Lian Lin sincerely confessed that she regretted everything she had done in the past. It was all her fault, but even though it was her sin, Qing Luo did not tell anyone that the destruction of his strength and his fall was her fault. But Qing Luoling only grudgingly remarked that this whole spectacle was too believable. Lian Lin swore that she wasn't lying to him and asked what she needed to do for him to believe her. But as he got closer, the guy whispered to her that he was curious to know what Lian Lin was willing to do and explained that he would no longer tolerate her lies because it was her own fault. After that, he came closer and kissed the girl, slowly tearing off her clothes. Bai He was watching from outside the door, and she was furious that Lian Lin couldn't die. In the end, after all this happened, Lian Lin was lying in her bed, not knowing what was going on. Qing Luo was very hostile, but in the end, something more happened between them, and Lian Lin did not dislike him at all. But suddenly, Adonis congratulated the protagonist because the amount of resentment of their target had decreased by as much as 25%. Lian Lin was truly, truly happy, but she realized that if she had to use this method every time, she would soon die of exhaustion. She should definitely change this tactic from a bodily one to some kind of emotional one. Adonis about agreed, because it was impossible to completely resolve all the grievances with the body alone. After all, the main villain wanted not only to possess Lian Lin's body, but also wanted her love. So it was in Lian Lin's best interest to start giving him love and support, and he better do it from the bottom of his heart. Otherwise, he would sense her insincerity. But he thought that with a character like Qing Luo's, it was only a matter of time before she fell in love with him. But suddenly, Qing Luo woke up and looked at Lian Lin with a smile and noticed that she was much better than all his expectations, and for such a girl was not a pity even to die. Finally, in the morning, Lian Lin woke up, and when her assistant came in, she found Lian Lin wrapped in Qing Luo's cloak, which she was madly displeased with. But hiding her anger, she asked if she should help her with something. After that, she brought Lian Lin some water so that she could wash her face. But looking at this water, Lian Lin immediately realized that there was something wrong with her, and so she grudgingly demanded Bai He to express her displeasure. But she pretended not to understand what she was talking about, and then Lian Lin offered to show this Qing Luo washing water. The girl was shocked and did not understand how Lian Lin noticed the difference with ordinary water. But looking more closely, she immediately discovered that the girl had poured medicine into it from the bottom of her heart. If even a little of this medicine got into her system, she would forever be unable to get pregnant. And Lian Lin thought that Bai He was indeed very heartless, and explained that once her beloved Qing Luo learned of this girl's duplicity and rotten soul, he would hardly keep her around any longer. He immediately realized that Lian Lin was just pretending to be good in front of her, and she only hoped that she was able to deceive her, and demanded that Lian Lin tell her demands and silence fee, but she calmly ordered her to get out of this palace. But Bai He unhappily threatened Lian Lin that if she left the palace, she would surely tell the whole world how she had seduced Qing Luo. But instead of answering, Lian Lin calmly grabbed the girl by the neck and explained that if she didn't want to act normally, then she would get rid of all the problems at once. Bai He didn't believe it until the last. Although Lian Lin didn't understand such a reaction, because in Qing Luo's eyes, she was just an evil liar. She could kill Bai He and give Qing Luo another little lie. And then realizing the seriousness of it, the girl admitted her wrong and begged to be released. She wouldn't dare do such a thing again. Lian Lin had mercy on her and ordered her to leave her room as soon as possible. She obediently ran out. As soon as Lian Lin was there, Adonis complimented her because Lian Lin looked really very intimidating, and that assistant was obviously very scared. but Leon Lin didn't understand what impressed him so much. After all, she had completely taken away her strength, even though she was only threatening. She was even more worried about where the main villain had gone. She hadn't seen him all morning. Adonis was shocked because he assumed that the guy who got what he wanted didn't think it was anything memorable and went in search of another woman. But Leon Lin only unhappily hit Adonis, explaining that Qing Luo is obviously not the kind of person who so easily switches to other women. Although she herself thought about his words and decided to take a walk in order to unwind. But as soon as she left the room, the guards blocked her way, explaining that Qing Luo had forbidden her to go out and she had to stay locked up. Leon Lin only wanted to take a walk, but the guy asked that Leon Lin not to make the situation worse because they might get into big trouble. Leon Lin looked at all the guards with a smile and sadly thought that she couldn't leave here even half a step, so she had to go back to her house. Some time passed and Leon Lin hadn't seen Qing Luo for a long time, so she turned to Adonis and wondered if Qing Luo had really changed his look. But suddenly Qing Luo came to her instead of Adonis, and hugging the girl noticed that she looked gloomy and sad, and suggested that it was because he had not visited her for a couple of days, and she got bored. But the girl was not satisfied and began to burst out, noticing that no one in the whole castle missed him, though it was a lie. And Qing Luo silently grabbed her, took her in his arms, and suggested that she go for a walk. For she was obviously tired of being locked up, and looking at her delighted look, he asked her not to look like that. He even gets scared from time to time. But the embarrassed Leon Lin demanded that he take her outside as soon as possible. For her reaction was clearly unrelated to Qing Luo's appearance. In the end, Qing Luo fulfilled his promise and carefully carrying Leon Lin in his arms, carried her straight across the rooftops to a very beautiful place. Then, seeing the girl's admiration, Qing Luo threw a cloak over her so that the girl would not freeze and catch cold. And then looking at Qing Luo, Leon Lin remembered that her past was connected with misfortunes. She had lived amidst conspiracy under a hail of bullets, and no one would have thought that there was anyone in her past life who really loved her that much. It was indeed a huge blessing, so she cried. And looking at this, Qing Luo realized that Leon Lin was crying because she was too sad to stay by his side. But all she did was go into Qing Luo's arms, asking him if he believed that soul rebirth was possible, and whether he believed that she had lived many lives and returned to the first one just to meet him. Qing Luo believed her and wanted to leave a mark on Leon Lin's soul, and she happily agreed. After that, the guy did not come close to her neck. Leon Lin was sure that he wanted to kiss her, but suddenly Qing Luo bit her neck, then immediately moved away, explaining that the work was done. And then a strange mark appeared on the place of his bite, which caused Leon Lin pain. But as soon as he kissed the bite site, the pain was immediately replaced by a pleasant sensation. And then Qing Luo explained that from now on, he had bound their blood and souls, and now they would be able to find each other even after 100 rebirths. Leon Lin thanked him, although she sadly realized that Qing Luo's body was increasingly being taken over by the dark force, and it was only a matter of time before something irreparable happened. In the morning, Leon Lin woke up to the screams of Adonis, who couldn't believe what a huge amount of the main villain's evil grudge had disappeared. In fact, it had decreased by another 40%. And Adonis didn't realize what she had done to him. Leon Lin was very happy about this. Adonis demanded an explanation as to how Leon Lin had accomplished this and was starting to imagine something obscene, but she explained that they were looking at the scenery and it seemed to help him. Adonis was happy that they wouldn't have to go 5 years back in time to correct all the mistakes, but suddenly, Leon Lin heard Qing Luo's voice calling her by name, which made her very confused. Coming to the girl's room, Qing Luo smilingly asked if she missed him, and Leon Lin only awkwardly hid her embarrassment. And satisfied with this reaction, Qing Luo explained that he had to leave for a while. Late at night, Leon Lin felt that something terrible had happened, so she wanted to go outside, where the guards once again asked her to stop, because the master had ordered her to stay in the room. So Leon Lin had to stay there. But this time she didn't listen. She didn't care about the consequences. She just pushed the guard away and followed to Qing Luo's room. There she found a terrifying scene that made her hands shake. There were many servants and doctors around Qing Luo. Qing Luo looked really terrible, but as soon as he saw Lian Lin, he ordered her to leave. Lian Lin didn't listen and started to approach carefully because she was very worried. But Qing Luo, instead of gratitude, grabbed the first thing that fell into his hands and threw it on the floor, and then the bowl broke into small pieces under the shout of Qing Luo, who ordered the girl to leave. In the end, unable to bear it, she left, and the last thing she could say was to tell Qing Luo that he was a real idiot. After all, she only wanted to help. When Lian Lin returned to her house, Adonis was able to appear, and immediately wondered who dared to make Lian Lin angry. After Lian Lin's story, he realized that the main villain's injury was so serious that he had been taken care of for such a long time. But Lian Lin sadly remarked that it was her care that the guy didn't need, because she came to him and was immediately kicked out. Adonis was very surprised at this, as they had just started to get closer. Lian Lin didn't know what had happened to him either, as Qing Luo seemed to have become a different person. Adonis realized that the main villain clearly had a reason, and Lian Lin could still go back to him and find out what happened. Lian Lin agreed with Adonis because she realized that she was probably too impulsive and thanked him for his advice. Adonis suggested that instead of thanking her, she should communicate with Qing Luo more often to reduce his resentment. But when she was about to return to Qing Luo, she heard the guards talking, blaming her for Qing Luo's condition. After all, the Lord had already suffered too much because of this girl. But in the end, when she quietly sneaked into his room, she saw that Qing Luo was not like herself. She looked at the guy, then called his name. But as she approached, he angrily grabbed her by the neck and lifted her up in the air and began to strangle her. He continued to do this until the girl cried his name over and over again, and only then was Qing Luo able to come out of such a trance and let her go. Adonis was in shock because of everything that had happened. After all, they had put a lot of effort into repairing their relationship, but it still happened. But instead of fear and despair, Lian Lin sadly watched her Qing Luo that was in so much pain, and she knew there was nothing she could do. So to somehow ease his suffering, she walked up to Qing Luo and kissed him. Qing Luo noticed that he asked the girl not to come, but she still never listened to him. But Lian Lin, hugging Qing Luo, who had taken human form, noticed that he didn't need to suffer alone. For she had already begged him that Qing Luo wouldn't hide anything from her, regardless of his action. And Qing Luo calmly hugged her and promised that such a thing would not happen again and asked Lian Lin not to cry. But suddenly, Adonis informed her that the main villain was the child of a human and a demon. And when she pushed him down, a part of the demonic essence awakened in him, and since then it could take over the guy's body at any time. Today, Qing Luo went to search for heavenly herbs that could restore Lian Lin's energy flow. But the cultivators ambushed him, and because of the severe injury, Qing Luo could no longer contain the demon within him. And then hugging Qing Luo tightly, Lian Lin realized that it was not surprising that the guards blamed her for everything that had happened. So the night passed, and in the morning the disgruntled girls scolded Qing Luo, ordering him to stop acting like a little child. He immediately awkwardly apologized to her and promised Lian Lin that he would be obedient and drink all the medicine, but not from her hands, because he could do it himself. But when he ate the medicine, he noticed that it was quite tasty. But when Lian Lin tasted it, it turned out that the medicine was terribly bitter, which only made Qing Luo laugh. But he smilingly remarked that it was the most delicious medicine for him because he was now taking it from Lian Lin's hands. As a result, later on, Lian Lin was pondering about those cultivators. She knew that they were going to attack the 9 Mysteries Hall again and was worried about Qing Luo. But Adonis noticed that they had only been separated for a short while, and the fact that Lian Lin had already missed him so much and was waiting for him to return caused Adonis pain. But Adonis noticed that Lian Lin had been doing great lately, and the amount of resentment of the main villain had dropped to 5%. Lian Lin was listening to Adonis, but mentally she was not by his side. For this day, her soul was especially troubled. But suddenly, a guard burst into her room with a sword, accusing Lian Lin of spreading important information despite the fact that their master loved her so much. She was shocked, but that guard thought that Lian Lin only decided to feign innocence and explained that their enemies were able to capture their master in torturous demonic chains. The guard pointed a blade at Lian Lin but was killed at the last moment, preventing him from harming Lian Lin. As it turned out, it was done by Bai He, who approached the girl with a smile and asked if Lian Lin believed that she was rid of her forever. Lian Lin immediately realized that it was Bai He's fault and did not understand such a thing. After all, Bai He loved Qing Luo, and now Lian Lin thought she was literally crazy. But Bai He calmly explained that Qing Luo was only half demon, and they had to exterminate him. Especially without Qing Luo's protection, Lian Lin could no longer do anything. And merely being an arrogant idiot, she explained that if Bai He couldn't own something, then she wouldn't let anyone else own it. And Bai He wanted to personally see Lian Lin die. But suddenly, Lian Lin fell to the floor, and then Bai He explained that now Lian Lin would not be able to speak for half an hour. But Lian Lin could go, because she wanted to see Qing Luo so badly. So she did, and the girl led her straight to Shu Ran. Shu Ran was very angry that Bai He had brought Lian Lin. But Lian Lin didn't pay attention to them. She looked around and noticed the chains holding Qing Luo back. Lian Lin didn't understand why this was happening now. It was supposed to happen in 6 months. But Shu Ran calmly said that he understood that Lian Lin was with Qing Luo only to avenge their clan in the future. But she no longer had anything to fear. But Lian Lin looked at Shu Ran and begged Shu Ran to give her an antidote, but instead of understanding, Shu Ran just hugged her and promised that no more demon would dare to drive the girl crazy. She was angry because Shu Ran claimed he wanted to save her, but he never asked her what she wanted. All she could do was stare at Qing Luo. And at that moment, he also turned his gaze on her, explaining that Lian Lin wished him dead, just like him. She was terrified. But in the next moment, Qing Luo broke his chains, assuming his devilish appearance. Everyone immediately pounced on him with weapons, realizing that the monster was losing control, and now he was completely vulnerable, so they had to kill him. But at this moment, Qing Luo's heart became very sick in his head, brought back all the memories related to Lian Lin. And so he just closed his eyes and stopped resisting, not understanding why Lian Lin did this to him. She finally broke free from Shu Ran's hands and ran up to Qing Luo and shouted his name, explaining that she had never betrayed him. Shu Ran didn't understand if he had done something wrong. After all, he didn't see anything wrong with getting rid of the demon. But then, Bai He shouted, explaining that Lian Lin had become the great demon's confidant, and letting her go would be a disaster. And Shu Ran didn't understand what Bai He was going to do in such a case, and while they were sorting things out, Adonis was panicking a lot. After all, the main villain couldn't die so early. It literally sounded like a stupid thing to do, lifelessly. Looking at Adonis, Lian Lin realized that there was no point in staying in this place now. Adonis was very sad because he knew that he was only 5% away from completing their mission, and Lian Lin asked for him to take her away from this place. Adonis calmly touched her head and explained that they had failed this mission, but they still had a lot to do, so he asked her not to be discouraged. And following that, Lian Lin just lifelessly fell down beside Qing Luo. Shu Ran was horrified, and he literally didn't understand if Lian Lin had just fallen and died so easily now. She seemed to be saddened by such an option. Lian Lin and Adonis ended up in the system center, and Adonis looked around at the grief-stricken Lian. Lin explained that no matter how they changed the story, Qing Luo's death at the end was inevitable, and asked her not to get too upset. But Lian Lin explained that such a death was horrible, especially since Qing Luo died thinking she was a traitor. But Adonis explained that it was an accident, but there was another chance. This time, Lian Lin could be brought 5 years past, and she would not be crippled without spiritual power. And then, grabbing this opportunity, Lian Lin asked Adonis to hurry up and take her there right now. Lian Lin realized that 5 years ago, this disaster had not happened yet, and she would be able to make amends to Qing Luo. Finally, the transfer started, but suddenly Adonis noticed a mark on Lian Lin's neck, and this mark seemed quite familiar to him. but still he calmly transferred the girl. As Adonis looked at him, he realized that they had not been able to take away the negative emotions, and the seal on the demon lord was getting stronger and stronger. At this moment, the girl suddenly woke up to the cries of her servants calling for her. Lu Feng ran up to her and explained that Qing Luo had been kneeling for 2 hours under the scorching sun and suggested that she call him inside. Lian Lin was shocked that she had come back, and something so terrible was already happening. So Lian Lin immediately ran outside, and Lu Feng warned that Head Soon was due back from the banquet, so if he found out about all this, he would obviously be displeased. But at this moment, the girl ran out in terror, looking around at Qing Luo, and he in turn absolutely did not understand why Mrs. Lian Lin was here. But she grabbed his hand and asked Qing Luo to get up as soon as possible, but suddenly she was pierced by pain. And then Adonis explained that during this period she was still very arrogant and proud. So she must not destroy the image, or she would be punished. So she had to go into the image and explain to Qing Luo that she had some business with him. She realized that such haste could ruin their relationship, so it was better for them to take their time. They ended up going inside while the smug Lu Feng realized that the real show was about to start, and Madame would finally punish this guy. But she calmly took the ointment, asking Qing Luo to sit quietly and obediently, and started to cover his wounds, explaining that she made him bask in the sun for 2 hours, not because she wanted to intimidate him, but unfortunately she couldn't find any reason. But Qing Luo calmly explained that Lian Lin was like a mother to him, and he must have made a mistake somewhere and got the punishment he deserved. And then, looking at this guy, Lian Lin felt a huge guilt, and didn't even believe that he was the great lord of the 9 Mysteries Hall that she remembered, and thought about whether to change the approach of their communication. In the end, because of so many thoughts, the girl had a bad headache and explained to Qing Luo that he could already leave. He ended up doing so. But at the last moment, Qing Luo crossed paths with Lu Feng, who reported that Lian Lin is really amazing at healing. She healed all of Qing Luo's wounds so that no one would even suspect that he was tortured. And he sadly realized that Lian Lin did all this only because of the master's accusation. Left alone, Lian Lin realized that the hard work she had done to get even a little closer to Qing Luo had been done for absolutely nothing. Adonis laughed it off. Adonis couldn't even believe that Qing Luo was now treating her like a mother, but it made Lian Lin angry. But she wasn't angry with Adonis. Lian Lin vowed that she would definitely win and change her image in Qing Luo's eyes. Adonis immediately noticed how well Lian Lin fit into her role, and she really looked like the terrifying girl she was supposed to be. But then he said that now in the original story there was a bathing scene with Qing Luo stealing his clothes. So Lian Lin quietly snuck in with some spare clothes. The others were already planning to take Qing Luo's clothes so that he would stay in the bathing room. After all, Lu Feng thought that Qing Luo deserved it. After all, no one allowed him to appropriate their mistress. Looking around at them, Lian Lin literally wished she could beat them up for such a thing. Qing Luo sat quietly realizing that he couldn't leave because of the lack of clothes. But at this moment, Lian Lin came to him, making him feel very embarrassed. She explained that Qing Luo shouldn't have been afraid because she only wanted to bathe in the hot springs, but accidentally took a man's uniform. But they had met, fortunately enough, because Lian Lin could give this uniform to Qing Luo. The guy awkwardly thanked the mistress and asked her to leave his clothes on the stool. She did so. Then she was about to leave, but suddenly she fell into the water because she slipped. Qing Luo awkwardly tried to help her, but the girl sensed some pleasant scent. And when she looked up, she realized that the fragrance was coming from the sakura trees in the area. And then looking at Qing Luo's body, Lian Lin realized that it must be that perfect figure, which was always talked about in books and novels. But because the girl's nose was bleeding from such a view, Adonis started laughing at her. Qing Luo, on the other hand, was scared out of his mind, so Lian Lin had to explain for a long time that this kind of thing sometimes happens, and it's normal. Suddenly, they heard someone talking. The guys were talking about how Qing Luo was very lucky, because when they stole his clothes, they were noticed by their head, and now they had to return them. And then the frightened Qing Luo realized that these guys should definitely not see Lian Lin in this place, so he grabbed her. Then he hid her under the water behind his back. Just at that moment, those guys came and threw his clothes into the water and noticed that Qing Luo was very lucky. Qing Luo calmly asked the guys to leave because he was about to leave. At this time, Lian Lin, who was underwater, was holding her breath. It was aggravated by the fact that Qing Luo was pressing her head too hard, and apparently he didn't think about the fact that she was a girl after all. But suddenly, Lian Lin noticed his legs, which were hidden by her hair. She was very impressed that the guy's skin was so softly colored. But suddenly there were bubbles in the water, because by this time Lian Lin had almost completely run out of air, and of course the others also noticed these bubbles. So Qing Luo had to come up with the only excuse he could, and of course this embarrassed the other guys immensely. But Qing Luo realized that these bubbles didn't look like Lian Lin was breathing out air, but rather Lian Lin was starting to choke. So he went down under the water, taking more air into his lungs. Then kissing her, he passed the air to the girl so that she could breathe, after which he calmly surfaced, and only then did the guys start to leave rejoicing that there was flowing water in this place. Otherwise, they would never have gotten in to swim after Qing Luo. In the end, once Qing Luo made sure they were gone, then he called out for the girl to surface, and after Qing Luo awkwardly looked back at Lian, Lin apologized to her for what he had just done. After all, he had no other choice, and he didn't want Lian Lin to take offense over something like this. After that, he quickly climbed out after putting on his clothes and apologized to Lian Lin again. And then looking at him, Lian Lin realized that she had really made a big mistake. And looking at the girl, Adonis began to mock her, because it was really funny to watch everything happening from the outside and how she made Qing Luo blush and then embarrassed to leave. But Lian Lin only noticed that Adonis had quite the physical body inside the system space, and so if Lian Lin hit him when they were back there again, Adonis would clearly be quite hurt. As a result, she went about her business later on and met with the head, who was very unhappy about her disappearance because they had searched everywhere and couldn't find her for a very long time. At first she was nervous, but afterwards she quickly found a suitable reason, explaining to the master that she had completely decided to devote herself to practicing in her room, and outside she had set up barriers, so she heard nothing and had completely lost track of time. But her servant knew that Lian Lin was not in her room and did not understand the reason for her lie, but the master calmly decided to move on to a more important matter. For today, when he was about to return, he was stopped by a group of villagers from the foothills. Its inhabitants had lately begun to disappear in the middle of the night. The missing people had been found dead, and their corpses were in a very strange condition, and it must have been the fault of the ghosts. He ordered them to scout immediately, and if things turned out to be more dangerous, they were to send out signal lights, and reinforcements would come at the earliest opportunity. Eventually, everyone set off, and then Lu Feng apologized to Qing Luo for the inconvenience. After all, they had not taken enough horses, and to his great misfortune, he was the one who did not have enough. But on the other hand, running was a great workout, so they hoped that Qing Luo would definitely do well. And Bai He, who was next to Qing Luo, asked Qing Luo to be patient a little longer. After all, they had almost arrived at the place, but Qing Luo calmly thanked her, which made her immediately embarrassed. But Lian Lin absolutely did not like how Qing Luo was being nice to this girl, but her attentive gaze immediately noticed. Then, Lian Lin ordered the youngest of their warriors to ride in the wagon. Everyone was shocked, but she explained that everyone had an important mission ahead of them. They couldn't let Qing Luo slow them down. Then the guy agreed, thinking that Lian Lin was really very smart. In the end, Lu Feng told Qing Luo that their mistress thought he was crazy slow and someone who delayed them a lot. So as an exception, she demanded Qing Luo to get on the wagon and watch his behavior. Then a disgruntled Lian Lin was very angry at Lu Feng for lying so brazenly. Eventually, when Qing Luo was in the wagon, Lian Lin noticed how tired he was. So she offered him her handkerchief so that he could wipe himself. But he calmly wiped his face with his sleeve, but Lian Lin still tried to be kind and asked him to listen to her, but he kept telling her that everything was fine, and then Leon Lin realized that this was how hearts were broken. But suddenly, the carriage jumped on one of the rocks, and so the girl fell straight into the arms of Qing Luo, and then their lips touched, and they kissed for the second time. All the others stopped, for the road had become stony. And so they asked Madam if she was all right, but Leon Lin calmly shouted that she was fine. Then she wanted to discuss what had happened with Qing Luo, but Qing Luo calmly said that it was just an accident that Madame should not worry about. And then she calmly withdrew and unhappily realized that her heart was really about to break from such imperturbability of the guy, and absorbed in her thoughts, Leon Lin did not notice his embarrassment, which he tried his best to hide. Eventually, they arrived at a place where there was a black fog over the village, which meant that there were ghosts that were dangerous to humans, and their teacher was right. Everyone should be careful. So they started knocking on the villagers' door, explaining that they were disciples of the sect and had come to help them. But none of the houses answered them. So Leon Lin ordered them to just silently start kicking down doors. They were shocked, and Bai He remarked that they were following the path of Taoism. And one couldn't be so rude to invade other people's homes, because then they wouldn't be any different from ordinary barbarians, and the reputation of their sect would suffer, and everyone supported her in this stance. But then Bai He immediately noticed Leon Lin's gaze and was worried. Did Leon Lin realize that she had deliberately opposed her? But that was impossible, because it was impossible to find a girl dumber than Leon Lin, so she would definitely not notice anything. And Leon Lin calmly looked around at everyone and asked if there was any point in the house if the person was on the verge of death. In the end, they immediately followed her order, but when they entered, they found that there was a person tied up there who had already started to mutate. Other people's faces began to appear. Everyone immediately realized that it was a serious disease, but Leon Lin noticed that it wasn't a simple disease. It was a curse that called hundreds of faces, and it was much more serious than a simple epidemic. Once infected, a distorted ghost face would appear on the face, and they would appear one after another until they covered the entire body. At the same time, the appearance of this curse should mean that a ghost was roaming around. Only a ghost cultivator could spawn an epidemic of 100 faces. And then everyone immediately panicked, for they knew that they wouldn't be able to deal with such strong demons. And they were also worried, for the infection rate was extremely high, and they were afraid of getting infected by it. But Leon Lin calmly took out the cursed infection medicine and gave 1 dose to everyone. She knew that this face epidemic had reached its peak, and everyone here should be infected by now. And then the people their master had encountered earlier could be carriers of the disease. And then the girl was shocked to realize that in that case, the sect master and his entourage might already be infected with the disease. So she immediately reported her speculation that the villagers that had met the master when they were cursed and could also have infected some of the people of their clan. So they had to immediately return to the mountain and give the clan head this medicine. But Bai, he didn't understand why, if the people were cursed, the master didn't let them know about it, because in that case, there was no point in the medicine. But Leon Lin calmly pointed out that the curse of the face starts from the abdomen, and the clan head might not have known about it, and was clearly displeased that Bai He didn't know such basic things. And then the other warriors immediately informed the girl that they would return as soon as possible. Eventually, she entered the house, where she sensed someone's presence. So she ordered the people who were hiding to come out. After all, they had come here to help them. And a woman and her son appeared in front of Leon Lin, who bowed down and asked her mistress to save them. But she calmly inquired why the door had not been opened for them. The woman explained that they heard knocking every night, but if someone opened the door, the person would disappear, and their mutilated bodies would appear behind the mountain immediately afterward. Leon Lin immediately realized that there was obviously something strange here, so she ordered a few people to stay in this place to help with the curse, and the rest were to go with her to the mountain. Then she warned Qing Luo that going to the mountain with her was dangerous, and he could stay in the village and help the others. But Bai He noticed that it was hard for Qing Luo to find an opportunity to have the experience. And was Leon Lin really worried that Qing Luo's skill might surpass that of Leon Lin herself? The others were immediately angry, for they didn't understand how her filthy mouth dared to say such a thing. After all, Bai He had clearly treated Madame without proper respect. But Lian Lin instead calmly approached Qing Luo himself, asking him if he wanted to stay in the village or if he wanted to go with them. In the end, he wished to go with Lian Lin. But every time they went up the mountain Bai, he kept stumbling and shouting loudly, which frightened everyone else, although she was happy that Qing Luo helped her every time. Lian Lin could clearly see that it was just a game to get Qing Luo's attention, and it made her even angrier. But she went on, because they had an important mission. Everything was fine until Lian Lin felt someone approaching. Everyone was immediately alert, but the next moment someone grabbed Lian Lin's leg. She immediately cut off the hand that had grabbed her and found that it was a dead man's hand, and the other dead men had already attacked the other warriors and started biting them. She explained to her warriors that they should not try to fight. They should just cut off the dead men's heads, because that was the only way to kill them. Then she looked at Qing Luo, who was fighting, killing the opponents one by one. His skill was really great. But when Lian Lin tried to launch a flare, the flare was blocked by a strange fog, not giving anyone a chance to see that they needed reinforcements. Then, a demon appeared. Noting that they were really pathetic if they dreamed that someone would help them and promised that no one would leave this place alive. After which this demon immediately pounced on Qing Luo, who was fighting with the rest of the dead. And then panicked, Lian Lin rushed to his aid, but then her body was pierced by another dead man's attack. But she continued to run anyway, and so at the last moment she covered Qing Luo's back and blocked the enemy's attack. Qing Luo immediately noticed the wound on the girl's back, which was very deep, and realized that she had literally just covered him with her own body. But the demon only laughed, looking at his minions being killed one by one, and explained to Lian Lin that she had no chance of winning with such wounds. Then that demon started attacking Bai He, and that's when Qing Luo came to her defense, chopping off the head of one of the dead men. But in the next moment, because Lian Lin was defenseless, she was pierced by the attack of one of the dead, and Qing Luo did not have time to help her. When he turned around, he was really terrified. But at that moment, a master appeared from the sky and said that now that the demon had wounded his daughter, he could say goodbye to his own life and began to attack him. At this moment, the other warriors approached Lian Lin and tried to bring her to her senses, not understanding how such a thing could happen to her. But she calmly got to her feet and walked up to Qing Luo. She asked why he had chosen to protect Bai He and not her. He just remained silent at first, unable to find the strength to answer. In fact, Qing Luo hoped that if he could protect Bai He, Lian Lin would be able to deal with the attack on his own. He was afraid that if Bai He died, Lian Lin would blame himself. Lian Lin realized who was more important to Qing Luo. It really hurt her a lot, and she didn't want to believe it until the last moment. Then she slowly started to faint. The next time she opened her eyes, she was already in her room. In front of her was Adonis, who remarked that Lian Lin had been incredibly lucky this time, and maybe she wouldn't be so lucky next time. But looking at her face, he realized that she was hurt that the main villain had gone to rescue another girl. But Adonis explained that she would still have time to grieve about it because they had to come up with a plan. She calmly explained that she had already figured out what she was going to do, and she just wanted to let the situation go and let things go. Adonis, of course, wasn't happy because it didn't seem like a plan at all. But suddenly someone came to her. Lian Lin immediately recognized the voice, for it belonged to Shu Ran. Lian Lin was surprised that he had returned from training so early. At this time, Qing Luo was preparing firewood as punishment. Because of him, the lady was injured, but he did not mind doing it. Suddenly, he heard strange sounds. When he looked around, he saw Lian Lin and Shu Ran coming straight towards him. Lu Feng immediately ran towards them, worried that they had come here. But Shu Ran only calmly inquired why Qing Luo was now chopping wood in such a heavy rain. And Lu Feng suggested that the girl go back inside, for it was raining too hard. But she calmly handed Qing Luo an umbrella, explaining that it was raining too hard and he could go back to his room. But at that moment, Shu Ran came up to her, sheltering her under his umbrella and explaining to Lian Lin that her wounds were too serious and she should not get wet. She only thanked him happily. After which Shu-ran explained to Qing Luo that the rain was indeed too heavy. Therefore, he should have already left instead of getting wet. But at the last moment, Qing Luo ran up to Lian Lin, grabbed her hand, and asked her to stop. She didn't understand the reason for this behavior, but the guy abruptly let her go and apologized for what happened last time. Lian Lin explained that he shouldn't blame himself. After all, she was the one who behaved impulsively, and she shouldn't have said such stupid things. Then she calmly turned away, explaining to Qing Luo that the rain was getting heavier. He had to go back. Qing Luo finally put down his probe and stood in the pouring rain, looking at the sky, not understanding why his heart was hurting so badly at that moment. In the end, Lian Lin returned her room and Adonis was very unhappy, not understanding why their villain's evil intentions had become even greater. Lian Lin was also shocked because she didn't say anything bad to him and even took all the blame for it. So she didn't understand the reason for this. But she asked Adonis to find out how Qing Luo was doing now, as it turned out that Bai He was near Qing Luo again, and when Lian Lin heard about it, she was really upset. Adonis also explained that now Bai He was running after Qing Luo and even holding an umbrella for him, and she was really like a snake, and Adonis explained that they must reclaim their villain from this girl. Looking at Lian Lin, Adonis didn't understand what Lian Lin was planning to do, but she explained that in all this time, she had already had time to think about all 5 years, and suddenly realized that all her pain was just nothing compared to the pain that Qing Luo had endured. But judging from the unchanging plot, Qing Luo was soon to fall off the cliff anyway. So until then, she would want to be with him as much as possible. But Adonis rather remarked that Lian Lin was behaving too well, and that's not how the antagonist of this story should be, so Lian Lin should have come to her senses. At this time, Bai He grabbed Qing Luo's sleeve and asked him to stop, and begged him to tell her what she had made him angry about. After all, if she knew the reason, she would definitely apologize to him. But Qing Luo was dissatisfied with Bai He's behavior, and looking at her asked her to behave decently and not to touch him anymore. Then he turned around and started to leave. But then Bai He suggested that Qing Luo was actually in love with Lian Lin, and then the guy was shocked and wondered what Bai He was talking about because they were all like family and such a thing was not allowed. But running up to Qing Luo, Bai He noticed that Qing Luo was definitely in love. So there was no point in deceiving her, but she didn't understand how Qing Luo could have any feelings for her. But Qing Luo broke out of the girl's grip by explaining that he didn't like Lian Lin. So Bai He should have calmed down soon, after which he quickly walked away. At this time, Adonis informed Lian Lin that the amount of offense their villain had taken had increased by as much as 9%, causing Lian Lin to be shocked. But Adonis excitedly reported that he didn't know what was going on, but now the guy was running towards that very cliff, and Adonis was literally hoping that Qing Luo wasn't going to do what he was supposed to in the original story. But Lian Lin had already run away, and all Adonis could do was at least ask that this girl grab an umbrella with her, but she wasn't paying attention. She was running towards Qing Luo. At this time, standing on the edge, the guy did not understand why everything was happening like this, and why he thought of Lian Lin as a girl. She should be like a sister. At this moment, Lian Lin ran up to Qing Luo and, frightened calling Qing Luo, asked him to come to her as soon as possible and not to do anything stupid. Qing Luo was disturbed by such words. After all, he had only come here to dispel bad thoughts, and didn't the girl think that Qing Luo was really going to jump off? But suddenly he stumbled, and so he went straight down this cliff. And all Lian Lin could do was to grab the guy by the edge of his clothes, but because he was heavier, Lian Lin flew straight down the cliff with him. And eventually, when she woke up, she was all bruised but alive, so she slowly started to look around. Then she looked at Qing Luo and realized that there was too much blood around, and as they were falling, Qing Luo hugged her and took the brunt of it. So she started to get close to him and crawled closer, because she found that her leg was broken and she couldn't get up. In the end, Qing Luo also woke up and was very concerned. Then he got to his feet and carefully approached the girl, began to lift her, and asked Lian Lin to bear a little, because he will think of something. He noticed a small cave, and lifting Lian Lin in his arms through the pain, began to carry her there. Lian Lin immediately found his wound because his shoulder was bleeding and begged him to let her go to the ground. But Qing Luo had no intention of doing so. He continued walking towards the cave to shelter her from the rain. Adonis, on the other hand, excitedly informed the girl that now the main villain's offense had increased by 5%. Adonis, looking at Qing Luo, did not understand how such a thing was possible and what was happening to him. And what was Lian Lin doing wrong? Lian Lin smiled as she snuggled closer to the guy and seemed to understand what the resentment was about. Eventually, when they were inside, Qing Luo made a fire and excitedly explained that it was still quite far from here to the top and offered to treat her wounds. But Lian Lin explained that Qing Luo was also injured and he should take care of himself. But he insisted, so that girl carefully lifted the edge of her dress, exposing the injured leg, causing Qing Luo to feel very embarrassed. After which, he apologized to Lian Lin for everything that had happened. But the girl calmly pinched Qing Luo's cheek and explained that it was no big deal, especially since she was fine. So Qing Luo didn't need to be upset, and he could calmly put medicine on her. But from this kind of behavior, the embarrassed guy was shocked because it absolutely did not add up to the image of the mistress he knew. And this reaction was also noticed by Lian Lin herself. But Qing Luo excitedly started to make excuses, but when he started to apply the medicine, he noticed that Lian Lin twitched. She was really in pain, but she smilingly explained that the place was just cool, so she was fine. But then, looking at her, the guy noticed something that he hadn't noticed before. After all, the girl's figure was really adorable, and he was very uncomfortable with his thoughts. But suddenly, Lian Lin started to take off her dresses, explaining that she needed to listen to the clothes, but awkward Qing Luo asked that Lian Lin should wait a bit until he finished dealing with the medicine. After that, they could deal with the clothes. But Lian Lin immediately noticed Qing Luo's red face, and so she thought that he might be sick. But because of such a touch, the guy embarrassedly moved further away from the girl. Lian Lin awkwardly wondered if Qing Luo hated her that much. He only excitedly said that he didn't hate her, and Lian Lin misunderstood. It was just that he very rarely touched girls, so he didn't know how to act. But Lian Lin knew that Qing Luo was around by. He quite often, and certainly wasn't afraid of her touch as he was afraid of her now. But Qing Luo explained that these touches couldn't be compared because this was exactly different. And then approaching him, Lian Lin smilingly asked why he thought so, and an awkward Qing Luo explained that to him, Lian Lin was an older sister and part of the family. So obviously the feelings for her were different. Lian Lin was obviously offended by this. Therefore, she asked Qing Luo to finish the medicine as soon as possible. In the end, once they finished, Lian Lin wanted to help the guy, but he awkwardly explained that he could handle it by himself, but the girl was adamant and took away his medicine. Following, Qing Luo took off his kimono, and then Lian Lin saw a huge wound on his shoulder, which looked really horrifying. But the awkward Qing Luo tried to convince Lian Lin that he was fine, but Lian Lin clearly saw that he was not, and did not understand why, with such a terrible wound, Qing Luo wanted to bandage her first, because Qing Luo's help was clearly more necessary. Lian Lin did not understand such a thing because she was the person who was paying for her sins, and Qing Luo should not be so kind to her. Then she wiped her tears so that Qing Luo would not notice them and ordered the guy to be silent. Qing Luo had been lying about his condition all this time, and she did not want to talk to a liar. She began to treat his wounds silently, but the embarrassed Qing Luo realized that Lian Lin was too kind to him, and he had really bad thoughts about her. Qing Luo felt very guilty. But at that moment, Lian Lin said that she wanted to talk about something important, and then she came closer and kissed Qing Luo. She thought that she liked Qing Luo a lot, but after she pulled away, Qing Luo became very awkward, and the girl, realizing that she did not want to aggravate the situation, changed the subject and began to take off her clothes, explaining that she was very uncomfortable to walk in the wet and wanted Qing Luo to help her dry her clothes. He immediately became wary and tried to explain that this was wrong, but Lian Lin only slyly asked if Qing Luo wanted her to freeze. Qing Luo immediately said that he would help her dry her clothes, and Lian Lin thanked him happily because she had gotten what she wanted. At this time, the joyful Adonis realized that the percentage of their villain's resentment had dropped by 40%, and if the redemption mission was successful this time, the Demon Lord's seal would definitely be weakened. In the end, Lian Lin handed Qing Luo the clothes and took his hand. He didn't understand such a thing, but the girl explained that she really liked him a lot, so much so that she wished the feelings were mutual, and awkwardly asked Qing Luo if he had the same feelings for her as well. But at that moment, instead of answering, he happily hugged the girl, explaining that he also liked Lian Lin more than anyone else, and she couldn't even imagine how strong his feelings were. With happiness, Lian Lin cried, but asked Qing Luo to be careful because his wound on her shoulder could open again. He immediately withdrew, apologized, but Lian Lin asked Qing Luo to also hand over his wet clothes so they could dry them. He began to slowly take off his kimono and awkwardly asked the girl to turn away. She complied with the guy's request with a smile, though this sort of thing really amused her. When she opened her eyes, she looked at the guy in embarrassment. He immediately noticed that Lian Lin was peeking and started to swear. But when they had dried their clothes and were ready to go out soon, they heard some noise. Adonis immediately explained to Lian Lin that she should be careful. After all, this was the same demon that Qing Luo had met in his previous life. And the demon calmly remarked that he didn't even expect to encounter 2 injured cultivators in this place. He was indeed very lucky. Adonis informed that their fiends here were willing to succumb to the fiendishness, and then Lian Lin would be very unlucky. Therefore, Lian Lin immediately warned Qing Luo that this person was indeed very dangerous, and asked him to be as careful as possible. But the demon approaching noticed that Qing Luo was very lucky to find such a beauty, and offered to lend Lian Lin for a couple of hours. At this moment, the guy got very angry and started to attack first, realizing that he could not forgive such words to some demon. In the end, the battle began, and then the demon was horrified to realize that Qing Luo had actually managed to hurt him. After that, the battle became even fiercer. Lian Lin, looking at the battle, realized that she really needed to heal her leg so that she could help Qing Luo. So she turned to Adonis. He explained that he could help, but they had already interfered in the outcome of the story too many times, and now Qing Luo had to get nasty in order to save the original story. But Lian Lin tearfully explained to Adonis that she didn't want to see Qing Luo suffer all this time. Adonis tried to explain that the fact that they were able to meet could already be called a miracle, and they wouldn't work out anyway. After all, Qing Luo is a long-dead person, and then crying, Lian Lin realized that she shouldn't rely on Adonis's help. So she herself activated the cure. Adonis immediately warned that the use of the forbidden healing technique could lead to irreversible consequences, and in any case should not help Qing Luo. After all, in that case, the time streams would change and things would take a more serious turn if Qing Luo didn't die or succumb to the foulness now. But Lian Lin asked Adonis to let her go. After all, she had done what he wanted before anyway, and now she just can't help but save this man. But Adonis noticed that Lian Lin was really an idiot. After all, if she did what she was planning to do now, she would soon die, and even Adonis wouldn't be able to help her in any way. And most importantly, their redemption mission would fail. Lian Lin promised that she could save Qing Luo while still accomplishing his task, so she asked him not to interfere. At this time, the battle continued, and the demon threw Qing Luo to the ground, saying that he was really good in the battle, but now all the power of Qing Luo will belong to the demon, then began to attack. But at the last moment, Lian Lin interceded, repulsing his attack, and ordered Qing Luo to run away as soon as possible and not to think about her. Lian Lin promised that he would not leave Qing Luo, and even on pain of death, he would stay by her side. At that time, Qing Luo, weeping, did not understand why Lian Lin was trying so hard to protect him and why she was so kind. But suddenly, just a few attacks. The demon wounded Lian Lin, and she fell to the ground unconscious. Then the demon approached Qing Luo, noticing that this guy really cared a lot about Lian Lin, and decided to take her strength first. But at that moment, the guy really got angry. Then he started to reincarnate into his demonic form and ordered the demon not to touch this girl. After that, he shortened the distance between them and struck a serious blow. After that, the demon immediately began to disintegrate. Adonis thought that Qing Luo's appearance was too strange and didn't understand why it reminded him so much of the image of their demon lord. And if their faces were also similar, then Adonis would be sure that it was the same person. Eventually, Lian Lin opened her eyes, and then the frightened Qing Luo explained that she didn't need to be afraid of him because he wouldn't hurt her and would definitely think of a way to restore her strength. But she explained that she wasn't afraid of him and didn't need any help. He didn't understand such a thing because otherwise he would die. But the girl smilingly asked him if he believed in the rebirth of the soul. He explained that he would believe anything Lian Lin told him. And then, crying, she explained that she had done many bad things in her past life and had made Qing Luo suffer. And even though it was a stupid misunderstanding, it was still her that made the guy die in despair, and she apologized to him and explained that she had come from the distant future to find him. Qing Luo, crying, believed her and asked her not to talk and waste her strength, for otherwise she would get worse. Then he bit his hand and tried to heal her with his blood, but she asked him not to hurt himself again because she was in great pain. The next moment, her body weakened and she died, and in the last seconds of crying, Qing Luo asked the girl to wake up and look at him. But it was too late, so she watched Qing Luo in the form of a ghost and asked him to forgive her. After which, Adonis said that the task had already been completed, and the girl had helped the main villain to completely get rid of his anger and resentment, and that was more than enough. She, crying, agreed, after which they disappeared. And at that moment, the state of the Demon King began to change. He breathed and began to revive. At this time, the girl was in the system center, and Adonis tried to calm her down, knowing that it was not easy for her to go through something like this, but explained that Lian Lin should realize that if she stayed in that place, the consequences would be terrible. She knew it from the beginning and asked to be given some time. Adonis agreed and suggested that she go on her next mission. Finally, after a while, the girl found herself in another person's body, and then the first thing she saw was some guy reaching out to kiss her. That's why she immediately hit him. Everyone else didn't understand what was going on and why the fight started so suddenly. Then looking at the girl, they realized that it was Junfu's youngest son, and they couldn't even believe that he really did that. But at that moment, another woman burst into the room, not understanding why there was a fight. But afterwards, she recognized the gentleman and asked him to be patient for a while, because soon the best actor will arrive. The shocked girl didn't understand what was going on and whether she had become a person who was very fond of visiting such places. She was Junfu's youngest daughter, and in order to avoid a marriage of convenience, her father had hidden her from childhood, pretending she was a boy. Since she was a little girl, she was arrogant, willful, and unpunished, and if she met a handsome boy, she would immediately take him captive. And places like this were her second home. So she awkwardly approached Adonis, demanding an explanation of what else she was doing in this world. He explained that she also rolled handsome guys up in a rug and took them home, and explained that the top actor the landlady had just spoken of was the man they needed. And then the shocked girl realized that she had apparently bought this man. But Adonis explained that this was not the end. He had originally been brought by slave traders as a commodity. So the girl had not only bought him, she had also kept him and forced him to sleep with her. So he was very eager to escape. But Karina is also a complicated person, so she just took a gold chain, tied the guy up, and started torturing him. It would seem that their villain should have hated the girl, but somehow he fell in love with her. And then the emperor ordered the guy to marry the princess, but the night before the wedding, the princess found out about the girl's real gender and wanted to tell everyone, but their villain killed the princess and wanted to run away with the girl. But she somehow told them that the villain killed the princess because of jealousy. And in the end, until his death, their villain kept the girl's secret. But his eyes were already filled with anger and hatred for her.